Hello, welcome again to FairtaX Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we're still the FAIRtax Guys, and we still don't have our scrolling banner. We're working on that. We got to
We'll have an animated scrolling banner with the official scrolling banner sound here very soon.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that. Of course, I'm sitting in front of a virtual background, so if I pull the banner apart, most of it would disappear against the background.
That's right.
We've got to.
That's right. You'll vanish into thin air, like the income tax, like the Internal Revenue Service would vanish into thin air with the passage of the fair tax.
I would love to see the Internal Revenue Service vanish into thin air with a stake driven through its heart, so it never rises again.
Oh my goodness, like a bad movie.
Yeah, which is why the fair tax is dependent upon the repeal of the 16th Amendment. The fair tax law cannot touch the Constitution per se. So we could repeal the statutory authority to collect an income tax, but to kill it for sure, we got to make it unconstitutional again. So that may be a program for another day. But I'm about ready to dig in. We didn't have time to do this last week because we were talking to Paul Wizakowski. Again, an incredibly creative guy. And if you did not see last week's program, I would highly suggest that you go to fairtaxguys.com and check out last week's program with Paul Wizakowski. But now we're going to go back into congress.gov.
Oh, yes.
Because we missed that last
Bob's
week.
favorite segment of the program.
Yeah, I know you're just dying to see what the Congress critters are up to. And right at the top of the list is H.R. 5354. To amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to establish a small business startup tax credit for veterans creating businesses in underserved communities. There's a companion Senate bill, 2812, that says the same thing. Now, what strikes you about that, if you want to incentivize people to start businesses, how about creating a really business-friendly environment by getting rid of the corporate income tax? What do you think of that?
There's an idea. Oh, my goodness. What a great opportunity. Yeah. And people get out there every day and they start businesses, but they're so encumbered by regulations in some cases that you almost have to say, well, why would I even want to start a business? But there are a lot of people out there that still jump into that entrepreneurial pool every day.
So now they're using the tax code to try to help particular businesses get started. Again, this was startup tax credit for veterans creating businesses in underserved communities. So they're kind of targeting that to a particular group. But again, if you want to stimulate business across the board, make the economy explode, pass the fair tax. And of course, there's a lot of talk today. You hear especially now that the current administration is really big. Anytime anybody associated with them is saying, we've got to make the corporations pay their fair share. I don't think they understand that when you raise taxes on a business of any size, be it the mom and pop grocery store on the corner or ExxonMobil, all you've done is create a higher cost of doing business. And what happens to costs of doing business? Your turn.
Up. The cost goes up. But all of that money doesn't get taken out of a particular profit margin for the company, although there may be a little bit of shavings off of what the company might retain, but a considerable amount of that ends up going into the cost of the goods to the consumer. That's you and me, folks. And yes. And so we have to take that into consideration. And I think, you hear the politicians at the microphone, they'll say, we need to tax the corporations. And it's both sides of the equation. I think when you look at what the fair tax can accomplish, it doesn't know a particular political party, but you hear people say, we need to get money from those corporations that don't pay taxes. Well, they're employing people. They provide money into a 401k for retirement. And they also give an opportunity for consumers to enjoy the products and the services that they offer at a reasonable price based on competition. And when you start taxing, then you end up saying to the company, well, we don't care about your ability to innovate and bring new products to market. So, we'll just go ahead and take some of that money. But what the company will do is they'll end up turning around and saying, okay, well, we're going to, instead of it being $9, it's going to be $10.50 or $11 for that product at wholesale. And then guess what? The person that's reselling their product at the retail level is going to pass that along because they're not going to be taking any shortage. And we're the guys at the bottom. So we're going to end up paying for it. We're going to pay for it regardless of whether it's tax to us or tax to the corporation.
People pay every penny of a corporate tax. So the plan to raise taxes on corporations is actually a plan to raise prices on everybody, regardless of how much they make. But that's something we may be able to get into on another day. Let me get back into this thing.
Yes, please.
Is, Congress.gov, HR 5353, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to exclude from gross income any amount awarded under a federal Pell Grant and any portion of a scholarship used by full-time students for room and board. So now they can tell you what your money is going to, how you can use your money and get a tax break, or if you use your money in a different way, you don't get a tax break. Don't you love the tax code doing that to you?
I can't imagine why that would be part of the tax code at anywhere. To encourage you to go in a particular direction if you're not inclined to participate in that particular endeavor, whatever it is that the government is trying to get you to be involved in or not be involved in. It's just, why is it in the tax code? Why would it even be put in the tax code anyway?
Oh, who knows? Let's move along here. S2810, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to ensure the solvency of the Black Lung Disability Trust Fund by extending the excise tax on coal. Got a better idea. Let's ensure the solvency of the entire federal budget by getting rid of the income tax and passing the fair tax.
Can you imagine we know that it would be almost like a light switch going on, at whatever day in the future everything turns to the fair tax model for tax on consumption, that the government is still going to get the amount of revenue they need, but the government is not going to be in our back pocket like they tend to want to do. As we see every time we open Congress.gov, we see little signs of minute specific control over the activities in the United States of America by the federal government through the tax code.
Okay, we got one more here. This is S2714, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide funds for administration of the Earned Income Tax Credit in Puerto Rico, which of course is technically part of the United States. Is that a territory, or what do they call that anyway?
Territory.
Okay, but so that's what that's all about. But the Internal Revenue Code is already 70-some thousand pages long, and the Congress critters just can't resist making it any longer. Isn't that fun?
It really is something to fathom. And I heard you and Ron talking about this probably a month ago, and it was some of these proposals are just that, and they really never even see the light of day, but they are just the actions of our elected representatives in terms of their promise to a constituent or to interest, business interest. They say, yeah, we'll go ahead and see if we can get that lit up for you. Yeah, and then they go in and put it in Congress.gov, and whether it makes it down the path to a bill to be signed, that's not necessarily what's promised.
Yeah, the lobbyists just want something in there. So, we've had several cases now where you've got two different representatives filing exactly the same bill on the same day that does the same thing. Two different lobbyists are getting satisfied here. But we need to move on here on Fair Tax Power Radio. We will again be digging back into Congress.gov next week and seeing what kind of crazy things that the Congress critters have got planned for you and me. But right now, I want to get to another thing. Again, we've always encouraged people to write to us at thefairtaxguys@gmail.com if they got questions or comments, especially really thoughtful ones. We can actually use them here on the program. And we've got one from a gentleman named Jesse Platt. He wrote to us a couple of weeks ago, has a couple of questions. Let me just kind of read the first one, and then you and I can dig into this. We also submitted these questions to Steve Hayes and Randy Fisher, two of the most knowledgeable fair tax people we know, and their opinions are also included in what we're going to say here. But Jesse says, hi, I'm recently researching the different concepts of tax systems, and I'm really interested in the fair tax. My question is, how does this affect the social programs as Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, food stamps, et cetera? Do these disappear, or is it strictly up to each individual state, or does the federal government decide whether to keep these programs or not? Since the government does not know what income everyone makes, I think it would be very difficult to keep these. All right, let's try to unpack some of this stuff. And
yeah, obviously, what the fair tax does is just moves the source of collecting revenue, and really has nothing to do with the operation of the federal government. So all of those aforementioned benefits or entitlements, programs would remain in place, and the fair tax just shifts the funding of the government from income to consumption.
yes, the fair tax just simply raises the same amount, or at least it said it was designed to raise the same amount of revenue for the government that the income tax does. Now, I'm pretty sure that a side effect of the fair tax is going to be that it's actually going to generate more revenue for the government, which means there will be more money for social programs or any other thing that the government does, because it is going to light off economic growth that is just unthinkable under the income tax system. We've seen several studies say you're looking at 11, 12% a year, and we're doing really good under the income tax to get 4%.
Right, that's right. And did you ever play kick the can when you were a kid?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what the federal government, our representatives like to do in Congress. They like to play kick the can. With some of these social programs, they just kick the can on down the road. For how many years now? 25 years or more, maybe even longer than that. People have said, well, the Social Security system is going broke. Well, we've heard that for half our lives almost. And so all they do is they just say, well, I'm going to be in, I'm going to get reelected 3 or 4 more times. And they just kick the can down the road and let the problem be solved by the next guy. And the next guy, one of the next guys could very well be the fair tax, just supercharging the economy, providing more revenue for the federal government to operate on, and those so-called representatives, which we hope are going to be and plan on having our fair tax people that we have signing those pledges now in office, that can turn around and say this additional revenue needs to go to make sure that those people that were promised Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, et cetera, are going to be able to have those benefits without us having to write IOUs back to ourselves for that money. And so that, at least that's my opinion on it. Randy Fisher had an interesting comment about that. Social Security and Medicare are directly funded by fair tax. Employers and self-employed persons report wages, so the benefit structure is untouched. As for food stamps and WIC, those federal programs are untouched by fair tax. Competition and market forces will bring prices down at retail on most products and services on an average of 10 to 12%. Prices are likely to drop more on labor-intensive large ticket items like new cars and houses.
Okay, so the short answer to Jesse's question is that the fair tax will not have an adverse effect on social programs, or actually anything that the government does, because it will just be bringing in the same amount of revenue. One thing that he said that I think he's a little bit misguided on, he mentioned, since the government does not know what income everyone makes, I think it would be very difficult to keep these. Jesse, in actual reality, the IRS knows a lot more about you than you want to give them credit for. There are strict rules that employers, the investment firms have to report anything you make to the IRS. In fact, there's even a proposal now that the IRS knows so much about your finances that we're going to save you the trouble of having to fill out a tax return every year. The IRS is going to fill it out for you. Now, that's another can of worms that we're not going to get into.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to call them right now when we get done with the show. I'm going to have the Internal Revenue Service fill out my tax returns. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that they're also talking about the $600, if you put $600 more transaction in your bank, that the banks are supposed to now report that to the Treasury.
Yeah, that's
at some level. Hasn't made it. That's part of their discussion in Washington.
That's another proposal that's being pitched as a measure we need in order to catch tax evaders. And again, that may be another subject for another day. But they're not looking for just big ones. Let's just say $600. If you got that much in your bank account, they're going to monitor every transaction in and out of your account. And I say something. Let's
It's
move
crazy.
on here.
It's absolutely crazy.
Okay, now you addressed a little bit of this in Randy's response when Jesse was asking my next question.
Yes.
Is, will this lower the cost of product since businesses will pay no initial taxes making the product? My understanding is that everything is taxed once and only once on new products. If that's true, won't the products be about the same price once we slap a 23% tax on? Now, also, here's another question. Can states add a state tax on top of the 23% sales tax? So you mentioned in Randy's response that the fair tax is going to significantly decrease the cost of doing business, probably to the point that retail prices will actually come down.
Even after exactly. And the competition will come in, and then imports become less attractive because they won't have the benefit of the reduction in the cost of building that product here in the United States. Will have a significant competitive advantage over import items, vehicles. I'm thinking primarily cameras, maybe that are imported from another country, video equipment, etc. As time goes on, people will want to manufacture in the United States because it's going to cost a lot less to bring that product or service to market.
Yes, right now, a lot of foreign countries have what they call a value added tax or a VAT. And when foreign companies produce products for export for the global market, then the governments rebate back to those manufacturers the cost of all the taxes that have been built into the price of that thing all along. Because VAT is a particularly insidious way to do taxes. It's added at every step of the production step. But the bottom line is that when the manufacturer gets their rebate on their VAT, their products go to the world market without the cost of their tax system embedded in them. So they are much more competitive than American products who do have the cost of our tax system embedded in their product. So
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Jesse, and you are right about this, Jesse, that it will be a one-time only. The fair tax is levied on the initial retail purchase of new goods and services as well, but new goods. And if a item like a house or a car or whatever is sold multiple times, no fair tax on any of those subsequent sales. It's only the initial retail sale that the fair tax will be collected on.
Do you think that a used car would be worth more, or people would seek out a used vehicle before they went to buy a new one? How do you think that's going to affect that end of the market?
Yeah, well, this is something that Jade Wally has addressed well, because the increased demand for used goods because there's no tax on them will probably, cause an increase in the prices of new goods, but there will eventually be an equilibrium reached. And
Gotcha.
So we will do that one. But there was one other thing that Jesse was asking about we need to address. That is, can states add a state tax on top of the 23% fair tax? How do states tax? And the answer to that is going to be, that's going to vary by state. Now,
it's going to be up to who's in charge and who's pushing it. But we've always said that the fair tax model for a tax on consumption, the proving ground is at the state level. And once states get in it, and once the people in those several states that are moving towards some type of fair tax model at the state level, they're going to go, we need this in Washington.
Yeah, there is nothing in the fair tax legislation itself that dictates to states whether they can or whether they can't, levy their state level sales tax on top of anything. And so I imagine some states will, some states won't. Again, would you levy the state sales tax on the entire price of an item, which contains the fair tax, or just on that portion of the item that the retailer gets to keep? All of those are questions that we're really not going to have a definitive answer to at this point. We'll have to see how it reacts. But I would imagine, just thinking off the top of my head, given that Georgia and Alabama are already considering replacing their state income tax with a fair tax style consumption tax, that not if, when the fair tax becomes the law of the land at the federal level, that there will be tremendous pressure on states to get rid of their state tax. It'll just be economic pressure. There won't be any, law trying to tell them that they can't do it anymore. But there should be a tremendous move away from income taxes at the state level as well, even though the answer, Jesse, to your question is yes, the states can add a state sales tax on top of it if they want to. There's nothing in the Fair Tax Act that prohibits that.
Once the businesses and the individuals become unfettered from the federal income tax with regard to savings, with regard to pricing of services and goods, the costs embedded in bringing that product or service to the consumer, the business will absolutely explode. The individual is going to now be able to save without having to worry about taxes. When we pass on our life's work in forms of wealth and savings to our kids and beyond, it all passes without that tax, without the death tax, without having taxes on savings, investments, and things like that. I mean, it's definitely a power thing for the folks in Washington. And at some point in time, we need to begin to think about how we're going to steer that ship away from their control back into the control of the citizenry of our country. The people that are running, that have signed the pledge, you folks who are watching and listening today, you can get involved at a very minimal level. Just write down 5 of your friends' names who you haven't talked to in a while and call them and say, hey, look, I want to tell you about the fair tax. And they'll say, well, what are you talking about? And you do that, and you just start in your own community at lunch or at church or wherever you might happen to be, at the ball game, for example, hockey game this winter. Make sure that you take an extra moment to mention the fair tax. And one thing I like about Ron and the story that Elaine told one time about the button that she had on her blouse. She always had 2, one for her and one for the person that she was going to hand that button to, which was really, really quite, and that's what it takes. It takes that personal contact, and we all have that opportunity every day.
And it does. So, Jesse, thank you so much for writing us. Again, if you've got questions or comments about the fair tax, especially nice, thoughtful ones like this one, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com is our email address. We're always happy to hear from folks. And if I say we'll address your questions on the program if we can, if they provide good fodder that everyone needs to know about.
Absolutely. Well,
right.
we talk about the marketplace. We've talked about it for a number of weeks, and it's been launched. It's out there. We are encouraging people who have a product or service who would like to reach a national audience, that being the membership of the Fair Tax, but it's open to everybody, regardless of affiliation with the Fair Tax organization. You can go onto the marketplace, FAIRtaxmarketplace.com, and check out the categories that are there. And if you have something that you're doing at your home, it may be your husband or wife is involved in some type of commerce activity, and something that could very well easily be put onto the Fair Tax Marketplace. It helps out the Fair Tax because a cut of what is sold goes there, but it also exposes you to a group of people who are involved in making the United States of America work better through a different form of taxation, not a tax on income, but a tax on consumption. And so I would encourage you personally to take a look at that today while you have an opportunity, while you're in front of your computer or mobile device that you're watching or listening to the show on. You want to go ahead and go to the Fair Tax Marketplace and check that out. As a possibility, there may be something there that you can find that you would like, but it also means, hey, if you have a product that you'd like to put out there, let's go ahead and talk about how we are going to help you get your product to the masses.
Amen. We're going to keep banging on this on Fair Tax Power Radio. FairtaxMarketplace.com is the web address. There's a become a vendor link if you want to list your business up there. And, all you have to do is agree. I think it's 10%, but let me not quote me on that quite yet. But there would be a percentage of every sale that you get as a referral through the marketplace. You would donate to the FAIRtax cause. If you would like to see a particular product, like more Rubik's Cubes on the marketplace, under About Us, there's a little suggestion box you can open up and leave your name and email address saying, I'd like to see these products. And the FAIRtax marketplace team takes those suggestions to vendors that can actually supply those products. And when one of them agrees to join the marketplace, you'll get an email saying, all right, remember that thing you wanted? It's available now. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot out there right yet. So it's going to take a while, have some patience before we can get a lot of vendors out there. And it's going to take, of course, the AFFT database is almost 400,000 people. So there are a lot of people that know about it already, but I'm sure there are others, your friends and family, that go steer them out there as well. And if we can get this vibrant, growing marketplace off the ground and working, we're going to have just rocket fuel for the FAIRtax movement. And that's going to be really good for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm excited about it. I have a few friends of mine who, and they know who they are, that have products that they can put on there tomorrow. Yeah, and I'm encouraging them right now publicly to do that. So get with the program, FAIRtaxmarketplace.com.
In the business you're in, you have contact with a lot of business people that advertise.
Oh, my goodness. We're here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the Arts District. Plenty of opportunity there for folks to engage in commerce with the entire country and around the world, because, of course, we know how the internet works. FAIRtaxmarketplace.com is where you want to start.
Yeah, and one more quick thing. It is free to sign up. It does not cost the vendor a thing to list your services or products on FAIRtax Marketplace. You only pay that commission when you get a sale through the marketplace. You've got about a minute and a half left. Now, something I haven't mentioned in the past couple of weeks here on FAIRtax Power Radio that I want to get into this time. And Bob, I want you to be a part of this. When we figure out when the next CPAC is going to be, whether it's going to be back here in Florida or whether it's going to be back up there to DC area, I'm trying to organize the FAIRtax 500. 500 FAIRtax volunteers walking around CPAC with their shirts and hats and all. And can you imagine just at the CPAC, you don't necessarily have to be a conservative to go there, but if you can get the FAIRtax message in front of all the politicians that are down there, and especially all the media that are down there. They've got an entire, they used to call it broadcast radio row. I think they call it broadcast row now. They've got people going on live all over the place. So if every time one of these media folks looks up and they see a FAIRtax person walking by, that's gonna make an impression.
Absolutely. And I'll go back to Neil Bortz. I know you were involved in radio and you listened to Neil Bortz. Ron and Elaine listened to Neil Bortz when they had their trucking company, and his message almost daily, because of course he was in Atlanta with Representative Linder, wrote the book. There's someone out there that can be that person in the media. And one of the ways to get to them is what Bob just said: go to the CPAC and actually shake hands with them, and take a bunch of Elaine's pins, FAIRtax pins, and pin them all over all the media and clip them on the back of their badge and make sure that they are aware. But folks, if you're in your local community, you can reach out to your TV and radio people, the local hosts, and tell them about the FAIRtax. Yep. They may be the ones to turn it on in your neck of the woods.
Let's win the FAIRtax 500, and that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. We're a slap out of time. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
The FAIRtax Guys reminding you again that the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So what would you do for her?
Well, we've got several programs that will help her. We just need to find out how much she makes. But the good news is, the less she does, the more we can help.
Yeah.
If I may, with the FAIRtax, we wouldn't even tax her income. So the more she makes, the more she has.
But still, a consumption tax could eat up a lot of her income.
Which is why at the beginning of every month, we're actually going to give back all that she pays in taxes on basic necessities.
You're going to give her back her taxes?
Every month, on everything taxed on basic necessities. But we're also going to give it back to you and to every American citizen.
Why?
Well, we believe taxes should be fair.